Good morning, fellow wargamers. Today we are talking about the Battle of Mortimer's Cross, February 1461, part of the War of the Roses. So Edmund Mortimer, the Earl of March, recently had become the Duke of York after his father had died in battle against the Lancastrians. Mortimer and his men had spent Christmas in either Shrewsbury or Gloucester. Some believed that Mortimer would take his men and move toward London, where there was still a body of Lancastrian troops. Others thought that he would head off to the north, to the border regions, and make war on the Lancastrians up there. But instead, he assembled his army, and he moved southward and came to Wigmore Castle. He must have had some intelligence that there was another Lancastrian army forming in the southwestern part of Wales. There was a port town down there where a number of foreign mercenaries had landed, along with some unarmored Irish troops under James Butler, who was the Earl of Wiltshire. James Butler had brought with him not only men from his Irish estates, but also some Bretons and some French. He had actually sailed from France with these mercenary troops, and he joined up with the Tudors. So Jasper Tudor, who was the Earl of Pembrokeshire down there in Wales. The Tudors were a family in Wales that had a significant amount of influence. So Jasper Tudor and his father, Owen Tudor, each had a number of Welshmen with them in their army. This whole assemblage, which some authors have described as a motley crew, moved out of Wales and were moving again toward that Lancastrian army somewhere in the middle of England that were threatening London. And the Yorkish faction had understood that because it's the middle of winter, it's still February, that the Lancastrian force coming up from Wales is going to have to stick to the road network. And they placed their bets south of Wigmore Castle. There was a crossroads that is now known as Mortimer's Cross. Now, the battlefield, as it has been traditionally conceived, described, there's not a lot of historical evidence that it takes place where it is claimed to have taken place, which is about 4 miles south of Wigmore Castle, where the River Lug makes kind of a meander toward the ancient Roman road that runs north-south. There are other people now that believe that there is this other road called the Ogleby Road, which traveled between London and another town in Wales, which I cannot pronounce, somewhat to the northwest, slightly to the northwest. So from southeast to northwest, this Ogleby Road, which disappeared over 200 years ago, does cross over the Roman road about another mile south of where the traditional battlefield is set. And it does not, because there are so few descriptions of the battlefield, and because the current battlefield and the current scholarship around where the troops may have been is in serious controversy, I felt no need to keep it in the north and moved it a mile further south, which places it still on some terrain, but there's not nearly as many hills or woodline for the Lancastrians coming from the west to take advantage of. Okay, so we're looking at this battlefield from the north going to the south. This is the Roman road that runs north-south, which is now known as Watling Street. There's another name for it too. I can't recall what it is at the moment. Anyway, this is the Roman road, the ancient Roman road. And this is the road down which the Yorkist faction brought their forces. I think we'll see. I'm trying to do a head nod here to WRG's army list from book number 3, which was assembled to go along with WRG Rules version 6. There are War of Roses forces in that book, and I'm trying to draw from that army list here. So I've done my best to fit that army list to this battle, and I think I've done a commendable job. Let me know in the comments if you disagree, if you're an expert on this particular battle or the War of the Roses. All right, so over here we've got the Yorkist faction, divided into 3 wards, which are delimited here by this green line, this red circle, and then the vanguard is up front. And then over here on the west, I've gone ahead and deployed the Lancastrians. Let's talk about the Lancastrians for a minute. They were allegedly loyalists to King Henry VI. As I mentioned, the Tudor power was a major family in the south of Wales. They marched out of Pembrokeshire in late January. The forces that James Butler brought across from France landed in Milford Haven around December 27th, 1460. And they left Pembrokeshire in January. And now here it is, early February. Some say it's Candlemas Day. I think it's either the 2nd or 3rd of February. So still very wintry weather. And a strange thing happens on the way to the battlefield. There's this strange phenomenon of the sun, which is called a perihelion, which basically makes the sun appear in 3 different places in the sky at one time, which the Yorkist forces began to panic, but their leader, the Earl of March, said, hold on a second, this is actually a good sign. This is a sign of the Trinity. This means we're going to be victorious in battle. So what we're going to see here is that this force takes no reaction tests until they are actively in melee or actively fired upon. That's how I'm going to interpret that advantage. The Lancastrians, they have a disadvantage in that if the Earl of Ormond in Wiltshire, James Butler, if he is lost, then you must remove 1 stand of mercenary troops if you're that player. All right, a little bit more about the battlefield. Again, this is the Ogleby Road. Because there are some hills, the land, so there's a river called the River Lug that runs west of here. This is kind of the floodplain that is starting to rise up towards some hills to the northeast. So it's required to place hills. It's required to place forest on either side of the Ogleby Road. And then down there in the southwest, the land actually starts heading toward a brook and a marsh. Not in this battlefield area, but I thought, okay, we're going to go ahead and make that marshy ground down there anyway, which makes for some interesting deployment options. The Lancastrian player must deploy within 12 inches of his or her baseline. In this case, they can also set up ambushes. If you place forces in the trees, which they have chosen to do, I'm leaving them on map for this playthrough, but if the Lancastrians deploy forces in the trees, they would show the referee where those forces are arrayed, and those forces are invisible to the Yorkist player until after they are revealed. So with a ambush, if you come within 5 inches of archers or crossbowmen in a wood line like they have here, these French crossbowmen, if you come within 5 inches, you spring the ambush. And so the Yorkist player here is going to be in the dark about 5 stands of troops. He's also got some troops down there in the wood line to the south of the Ogleby Road. Okay, let's talk about the forces themselves, Yorkist forces. So I'm going to keep traditionally 3 different wards or guards. Up front, we have the vanguard. The vanguard is led by Sir Walter Devereux. There is 1 stand of 10 figures of basically heavy horse, what's called super heavy knights, which are grade B troops. There are 3 stands of billmen. Those are heavy infantry, grade C. The middle guard, which is commanded by the commanding officer, Edmund Mortimer, Earl of March, who is right here in the middle, has quite a lot of figures. So they've got 1 stand of heavy troops, again, billmen. They've got 2 stands of 8 figures of heavy billmen as well. Up front, they've got 2 stands of basically what coureurs, which I'm considering to be medium cavalry, medium horse. They've also got with them a set of archers. So 2 stands of longbowmen, which are led by by a knight from a nearby castle by the name of Sir Richard Croft. He's going to act as the master of bows here. It does look like there's more bowmen here than there ought to be, but it's really just 2 stands of 6. But each of them also have stakes that they can in place. stakes take 2 turns to emplace, and they provide an advantage during melee versus cavalry and versus infantry, but they're destroyed after 1 turn of infantry, 1 turn of melee. All right, and then finally the rear guard here, delimited by the red, that is led by Lord William Herbert. Later he becomes the Earl of Pembroke, so a little bit of foreshadowing here. Anyway, he's got 2 stands of 8 figures of heavy cavalry, which I'm calling medium horse, right? So that's these 2. He's deployed on the right. And then he's also got 2 stands of 8 figures of heavy infantry. The Yorkists are required to deploy in this northwestern sector between the 2 roads. So he can't go onto the road or beyond the road for his deployment. So he's chosen to push everything all the way up as far as he can, which will get us right into the action. This is designed for a table that's 4 foot wide by 6 foot long. This table is not. This table is a little bit more like 3 3/4 feet wide, and then it's about 5.5 feet long, way up there where I've delimited it. But again, not a lot of action is going to happen down on that wing unless players really get kind of creative with stuff. Lancastrians, as I mentioned, they are required to deploy within 12 inches of their baseline. In this case, a smaller table means that we're going to get right into the action. The vanguard is very heavy for these guys. I may adjust this down after this playtest, but I've given them 6 stands of basically heavy cavalry that is commanded by Jasper Tudor, the Earl of Pembroke, right here in the middle. He also has a middle guard, which consists of the troops that James Butler has brought over from across the seas. And that consists of his 2 stands of unarmored light infantry for the Irish, which are unarmored. And he also has 3 stands of shielded light infantry, graded C, which are Breton mercenaries, which I'm going to call them javelineers. So we got 3 stands of javelineers. And then finally, which one of these should be javelineers? I should replace that with the javelin guy up front. And then French mercenaries, they've got 3 stands of crossbowmen, which attack as lightfoot and defend as heavyfoot. Basically, they're called LMI, light medium infantry, in WRG speak. Finally, we also have a rear guard down there on the southernmost portion in the tree line and outside of the tree line. So in the tree line, we've got 2 Welsh light medium infantry, grade C. Again, attacks as lightfoot, defends as heavyfoot. And then outside of there, they've got their own curs, which are considered in WRG rules as HC, heavy cavalry, grade B, which we would consider in chainmail to be medium horse, which is why we have got yellow. Again, going back to the block convention I've been using for multiple playthroughs, green are lighter troops, yellow are stiffer troops, and medium troops, and then finally red is your real heavy punch. The disparity is that these guys have about 3,600 troops on their side, on the Lancastrian side, and the Yorkists only have what did I say, about 2,400. So it's going to be quite a disparity. So the Yorkists have 1,156 points. If you look at the tournament point calculation for this battle, and then the Lancastrians come in with, where's it at? 1,805. So 1,805 to 1,156. The crossroads themselves count for 200 points if it's undisputed, 100 points if it is in dispute. The way you calculate the victory is you take all the troops that have been routed, destroyed, lost, whatever, compare those 2 totals, and then add in the terrain feature. What do I mean by disputed or undisputed? If these guys are on the crossroads, if they're on the X and there is no chance that they can be displaced, they're not actively in melee, they can't be charged by anybody, they could potentially displace them, they get all 200 points. Otherwise, they only get 100 points. I think they're going to immediately deploy onto that crossroads, but they are going to get charged by these heavy horse almost out of the gate. Apologies for you WRG aficionados if you like the WRG nomenclature better. I'm probably going to revert numerous times in this battle to calling things by their chainmail convention, which is going to be lightfoot, heavyfoot, armored foot, which is dismounted knights, and light light horse, medium horse, and heavy horse, which would be your mounted knights, super heavy knights over here.